We just got our Mercedes back from the shop, and even I was shocked by the cost of this vehicle to repair it. Now, if you saw the last video, we actually had a check engine light. I pulled the code, but I had to take it into the dealer for them to get it fixed and sorted out. But there was a resolution, and believe it or not, it impacts almost every one of these C-Class GLCs and potentially all the A GLAs and all of the entry-level Benzes with that 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. There's a known issue, it's widespread, and almost every single owner of some of these cars are likely going to be dealing with this at least once in their life. This invoice here is going to tell the whole story. I want to break this down. I want to share what they actually wrote, what it ended up costing us, and if you're an owner of certain models, you're screwed because it's going to cost you more money yet. Let's get into it now. If you're liking the video so far, you're gonna love the entire channel. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and don't forget to hit the notification bell. So on top of the laundry list of issues with our Mercedes C300 that we found, for example, like our speaker here popped into the door cavity, or as well, this body panel right here popped off when we hit a set of train tracks, or unfortunately there's this weird squeaking noise that doesn't seem to go away, and it seems to happen regardless of which tires you put on there. And we've had a host of different faults with lights, sensors, and codes that seem to be popping up on the dashboard, and it even more so when it seems the weather is getting colder. Now we have a whole new issue. Let's pop the hood and take a closer look, shall we? Now I want to look at this car from a positive perspective. I don't want it all to be negative because overall we really enjoy this car. We love the way it drives, it handles, it performs well, it's good on fuel. And even the engine, even though it's a little rackety because it's a French-derived Renault-based engine, it still runs well, good fuel economy, and it's been relatively durable. But there has been one issue now that just creeped up, and unfortunately that's why we had to take the vehicle into the dealership. Now, after having a conversation with the service writer, I'm starting to find out some weird nuances about that engine and the failure that we found ourselves subjected to. Positive note, overall we love the car, but it's something you have to live. It's almost like an Achilles with these vehicles. Now you have a 9-speed automatic transmission. They seem to be pretty robust. Most of the electronics seem to be pretty robust, and the engine is great. It doesn't burn oil, it runs great, good performance, good fuel economy, and overall it's an easy car to service. You know, I've done already some basic maintenance like oil changes myself, cooling systems easy to access, battery change I've already done as well, and even to access to do brake flushes are also quite easy. Everything's there, everything's quite accessible, and most of the equipment under the hood is quite easy to work on. Now there is a problem. The warranty's gone. Yes, the warranty ran out a few months back, and now all of a sudden things seem to creep in. Right after the warranty, we had some of these weird codes come up with the lights and some of the sensors. Now, of course, lo and behold, the warranty's gone, and we had this new check engine light. Now, when I pulled the code with my OBD code reader, it told me that it had related directly to the PCV. Well, the PCV, the crankcase ventilation system, got me thinking, uh-oh, what's that all about? So I started to do the research online, and I found out because the early generations and the vehicles, when they started to see these issues, there was people talking on Reddit and the forums saying, hey, I just had this PCV fail and what's it going to cost? And people were talking about it taking 6, 7, 8 hours in a shop to replace it, because the PCV, there's a bunch of equipment you have to route it around. It goes in behind the engine, the front of the engine goes all the way around. It's quite cumbersome. It's not a overly complex job, it's just very invasive and very time consuming. And on top of it, the part itself is in that $500, $600, $700 US for that replacement part. The worst part is now you're looking at a repair that could be in that $2,500 to $3,000 range right after the warranty period is gone. Go figure. Now, before I end up telling you guys what this actually ended up costing us, I want to point something out, and I want to read the invoice word for word and what they actually wrote, because if this is something happening to you and you're driving one of these cars or considering driving one of these cars, make sure that you do the right follow-up. And I'll give you a hint. There's certain cars that are covered and certain cars that aren't covered under a specific warranty. But first of all, the part that was replaced, we have this right here. You'll notice there's some foam, and I was told that if you see this part and it's got sort of a foam sheath around it, that's part of that PCV system. You can see it tucks in under there, and as you lift this up, you can see part of it under here, and you can put this back down. But if you see that foam, you'll notice that routing goes all the way under, and it goes way in behind there, and it goes underneath, and it just gets very convoluted, which means the labor is definitely up there. And that's why it takes so much time, because you have to go from the top to bottom, bottom to top, and it means you have to pull a lot of equipment apart to do it. So I've got the invoice here, and let's read this to you. Okay, so after pulling the scan, which they essentially verified what I found with my little cheap OBD code reader, they basically say, okay, so verified customer concern, which I complained. Of course, I said I had a check engine light. I as well pulled the code, and I said there was an issue. Of course, the vehicle, I also noticed it was kind of running a little bit lumpy, or it wasn't perfect. You know, it wasn't that smooth or fine feel, and I knew something was off a little bit. That said, I didn't drive it for very long like that. The check engine light came on. I was 5 minutes from home. I parked it, and it's been sitting for 2 weeks, and then I drove it into the dealer like that 2 weeks later. Okay, so here's what they write. They say, verified customer concern, test drove, check engine light is on, vehicle drives well. Connected charger, scanned vehicle, ME was stored faults, P052E71, and they say crankcase vent valve malfunction, actuator blocked, is what they're saying. Performed test, plan, performed visual inspection, no visible damage, engine oil is fine. Test plan successful at this time, cleared fault memory. Crankcase vent replacement required as per diagnosis relating to the fault, P052E71. After approval, because I'm told that they had to reach out to Mercedes-Benz to get some special approval to even replace this part, and apparently it sounds like there was an issue, a well-known, well-documented issue with the PCV system on these 2-liter turbo engines like they have right here. So it had to get a verification from headquarters. So after approval, replaced engine crankcase vent valve. This required negative battery post disconnect, removal of upper engine cover, this thing, center and rear belly pans underneath, air intake hose, upstream and intake housing, unclipping of coolant lines from the bracket, partial disconnect of engine wiring harness from intake manifold, disconnect vent and purge lines on charge air cooler and intake manifold, removal of intake manifold from EGR, removal of ME together with bracket, relieving pressure in cooling system, and removal of coolant lines, that's definitely very invasive, and removal of charge air cooler. Loosened drive belt tensioner and belt, disconnected AC compressor mounting bolts, secured engine. Whoa, there sounds like they're taking the whole thing almost on the verge of an engine removal. Secured the engine, removed left engine support and mount. Engine mounts getting pulled. Disconnected alternator, replaced crankcase vent valve with kit. Refit all parts, torque to spec, topped up coolant, bled air out of cooling system, cleaned up top and bottom of engine, connected charger, scanned the vehicle, cleared the fault memory, test drove, vehicle drives well, no faults after final test drive. As you can see, very, very invasive, lots of parts coming apart, lots of parts getting removed temporarily, lifted, held together. There's lots of work, and it's no wonder when they say this takes 5, 6, 7 hours to do. Yeah, and that's for somebody who's quite experienced. For me, I'd probably be working on this for the weekend, even if I wanted to tackle this. So for those people that had this issue come up early on, this was a big problem, and it's well known, sadly. But hey, you know what? Get past that, and I'll tell you, we actually had a good result, and it was a real win for us in the end. Well, there's some good news and there's some bad news regarding this repair. The good news is, apparently, allegedly, they say because of a lawsuit many moons ago, there was a lawsuit that challenged Mercedes-Benz because of some issues, because of these faulty PCV valves. And related to that, they lost the lawsuit. As a result, Mercedes now has this ongoing bulletin or warranty extension, whatever you prefer to call it. Now that warranties that new PCV system an actual warranty of, it sounds like an extended 15 years or about 241,000 kilometers. And so when I talked to the service writer, I mentioned that number because I read that online, and he actually said, well, for at least that long, it may even get longer. With time, who knows? That may be indefinitely warranted. So ultimately, the good news is they warranted that part because of a lawsuit, and our C300 basically went in the shop, out of the shop with $0. We didn't even pay diagnostic fee. We didn't have to pay anything, not a red cent. The only thing it cost me was the fuel to get down to the dealership and home. So I personally think that was a wonderful experience. I had an awesome time knowing that, you know what, especially after I did the research taking the car into the dealership, I had a pretty sound belief what I was up against, but I didn't know until I knew. Now I know that because it was PCV related, I was able to get in there, get it all done, scot-free, not have to pay a dime. Now that's the good news, $0 out of my pocket. Now, when we chatted, he had said there was another couple reasons and justifications. He said, in some cases, with vehicles that are driven in extremely cold temperatures, i.e. ours, because we live in Canada, and we often see these extreme temperatures. We can see plus 40 degrees Celsius all the way to minus 40 degrees Celsius. And he said, it seems to be hitting, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but more or less suggested that in extreme cold weather, it seems to impact them a lot worse. In other words, they can freeze up because there's an internal heater element within that can let go, stop working, it freezes up, and then it pushes the oil outwards. And then you start really having real problems. Oil going to places that it really doesn't belong. So that could lead to bigger, more catastrophic failures should you leave it for too long. So if you have that fault code related to the PCV, do not leave that. Get it done ASAP. And the win is, it's likely going to be done for free. Now, there is some bad news in this. What I understand, according to the writer, is the C300, the coupe, the sedan, just like mine, we have the C300 with what they call a longitudinal engine. You'll notice the engine runs front to back. This engine configuration, like the C300 as well as the GLC 300, which is more the SUV, although that's a GLE, but the smaller version of that is the GLC. The GLC 300, which gives you the same engine, same transmission, and it's essentially the same configuration, longitudinal, just like this. Those are also covered. So any of the GLC and the C300s with that type of engine, with the 2-liter that runs front to back, are apparently, I'm told, covered under that warranty, which means if you have that PCV failure, you're likely going to get it done for free, and they're going to extend a massive warranty on that. So that's a huge win. The downside is there's other cars that use a very, very similar version of this engine, a 2-liter turbocharged engine, but it's transversely mounted. So this is longitudinal. Transverse would be like Hondas and Toyotas, where they put the engine sideways. You get it? So your cylinders 1 through 4 are left to right. That engine that you're going to find in other vehicles, the GLA, the CLA, the GLB, you get the gist? Those vehicles that are predominantly a front-wheel drive, this one, of course, is a rear-wheel drive with a little extra boost to the front with the 4MATIC. But those lower entry-level vehicles like the GLA, CLA, and GLBs have predominantly a front-wheel drive. So what they do is they turn the engine sideways instead of front to back. It's those engines that have a very similar system, the same type of operation with the PCV, and unfortunately they are not currently included in that extended warranty. And the worst part is, I'm told that they fail at a similar rate. So I basically said to the service writer, I said, there's no warranty covered. He absolutely confirmed no warranty covered on the entry-level cars with the transversely mounted engines. He gave me the examples. I said, not yet. Wait till it crosses the path of the wrong person. And he laughed and chuckled. And we both agreed that something seems odd there. I believe, in my own personal opinion, it's probably a matter of time before Mercedes-Benz gets that looked after too for those versions. But for now, if you have a 2-liter engine in the C and the GLC, you're good on the PCV. If you're driving one of the more entry-level cars, people ask me all the time, what's the most reliable cars in the Mercedes brand lineup? I always say keep it simple. Smaller engines, no air ride suspension systems. But unfortunately, that's one of those systems that can let you down and can cost you significant amount of money. That's on top of all of the other components. Now that said, the rest of the engine seems to be quite well put together and seems to be holding up quite well. Here's me knocking on wood. But overall, we're relatively pleased with this. Yes, there's been some fragile parts. I've already mentioned the lighting and the sensors and some of the body panels. There's some squeaks and rattles inside. But overall, we're still loving the car. And at this time, we're going to continue on driving it as we normally would. So I hope that helps anybody. If you're experiencing a similar fault, similar failure, definitely, or if you get a check engine light, the first thing you want to do is check to make sure your gas cap is on tight. You know how many times you hear of somebody getting a check engine light because they just fueled up and they maybe didn't screw this on quite tightly. So always check that. Simple checks first. And the next check I would suggest is get your basic cheap OBD code reader and go under here and take a look. Plug into the OBD2 port and you can pull out a code. That code, if it reads similar to what I read, with the PCV failure, then there's a good possibility that you may get that repair done free of charge. Now, you're going to check the car in anyway. It's got a check engine light. You're probably going to drive it into the dealer anyway. But knowing, of course, it could relieve some stress for you if you have a CEL, and in fact, it's related to the PCV, it could end up saving you thousands of dollars. Anyway, I hope that helped everybody. And again, as always, be sure to check out the video, of course, with our Toyota service dealer scam issue that we've been dealing with. We love the car, but there have been some issues. Check it out. Hope to see each and every one in the next one, everybody. See you real soon. Bye-bye.